what sort of mentally unstable deeds would legally qualify to put this amendment into effect?
Well, Alex, it's a great question. The amendment itself doesn't really specify, and there's really no case law to guide us because it hasn't ever happened. So it's really going to be up to Congress. It's like impeachment in that what is an impeachable offense is whatever Congress decides is an impeachable offense, and whatever clarifies or qualifies somebody as being unfit for office is whatever Congress, by a 2/3 vote, decides. So it could be anything from actually being incapacitated, as President Wilson supposedly was during the final days of his office, or just, mental problems. It really is a matter for Congress ultimately to decide. There are no set legal criteria.
So I'm sure, as you heard, Stephen, again yesterday, the president pointed out there was no collusion. But as my guest said later on our air, that is not what he should be worried about. Take a listen to this.
There are so many pieces that when you put them together, you go, okay, he fired Sally Yates, but he kept Flynn. Why did he do that? That has to have something to do with it. And his constant attack on the media, the FBI, and Mueller is definitely part of what looks like an obstruction to me. And his drafting of the false statement about the reason for the meeting in Trump Tower with his son and Manafort and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. That was something else that looks like obstruction.
Stephen, do you agree with Jill Wine-Banks there? Is there a case for obstruction from the evidence we've seen thus far?
I think there is a pretty strong case for obstruction of justice when you add it all up. The firing of Comey, the reported attempts earlier on to get Comey to back off from the investigation, the attempts to get Jeff Sessions to not recuse himself from the matter, the repeated lying about the nature and extent of the contacts with Russia. If it isn't a slam dunk case for obstruction right now, there's at least enough to warrant serious further investigation.
So the Los Angeles Times is now reporting that Robert Mueller's investigation is looking into an encounter that Ivanka Trump had with two of the participants of that 2016 June Trump Tower meeting. A person familiar with the run-in is telling the Times that Ivanka exchanged pleasantries with the Russian lawyer as well as a lobbyist in an elevator as they were leaving the building. And investigators say they want to know about every contact with these visitors that day. But what would they get from this, an exchange of pleasantries in an elevator? And do you think then Ivanka could face any charges for speaking to them?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, if all it really was just an exchange of pleasantries, then I don't think it's really relevant in any legal sense, nor would it justify, broadening the investigation to look into Ivanka's activities. But if they actually talked substance about, assistance that the Russians could provide, any kind of, arrangements between them, well, then that would be a different matter.